All right, hello and welcome to what should be the first build guide I put out this patch. I'm working on two builds at the same time, so there's some chance that the other one comes out, but I think this one will make it first. This was actually a build that was planned last patch, but life got in the way and I wasn't able to put it out. Actually works in our favor for two reasons. One is a passive that was pretty powerful was bugged and not working, so now we can take advantage of it and we get more attack speed. And two, they did the 3D art for the unique weapon and it's pretty sick. So now we look way cooler than we looked before, so this is a pretty significant visual upgrade for the build. And that's going to be a best in slot for us. It's Death's Embrace, which is created by another content creator and community member, Heavy. I will give you a link to Heavy's Twitch somewhere below or on the screen at some point so that you can go check him out and his content. But he made this. It's really good. It definitely raises the power of Harvest quite a bit to the point to where I like it. It still has some issues, mostly just due to it being true melee, where you actually have to stand next to enemies and they can melee you, which has been a problem in this game since I've started playing it. But it does enough damage and the double health bar that I think it's more than playable and fun. And if you like the Harvest playstyle, then it really brings it up the next level and makes it competitive into the corruption levels. Like, it's not going to be like a meta build, but it's going to be really good to play. Feel really good. It scales really well. Let me just start by showing you like the damage it does because it's really high on the dummy, and then we'll go in and we'll do an actual echo. Okay, so let's set everything up. Here we go. We're gonna put our zombies on auto cast and actually have them attack that. And all right, so you should be able to see pretty quickly that our numbers start to scale to pretty significant numbers in the hundreds of thousands. So far I've seen over 500,000 a couple of times. It just depends on like what's happening at the time. If everything's aligning just right, you'll get really large numbers. So this does not struggle with area, with killing groups of mobs. This does not struggle with bosses. Damage wise, it does just fine on both. Okay, so let's go ahead and just quickly show. I'm just gonna do, I don't even know which one I have like corruption on, but I don't have anything super high corruption. They're all within the hundreds somewhere. This can definitely do a lot more than that. I just haven't pushed it any further. Be aware that is not like its limit. Let's see what we got. This is just 100 corruption, whatever. We'll just to show you guys what it looks like as far as the clear, how it looks in a map. So you can get a sense of what you're getting into if you decide to play this build. All right, so the play style itself, we'll get into a little more on the pros and cons, but it's pretty easy to play overall. You have one thing that I'll probably put on autocast, which is the zombies, and then of course you have your movement ability, which is Reap, and you will keep on Aura of Decay. And the only thing you really have to manage if you autocast zombies, which you can choose not to, it's you can probably get a little bit extra out of it if you did that way, but it's also maybe a little less annoying as far as when you cast zombies, they do stop you in your tracks for like a very short period of time. But the only thing you really have to worry about doing is using your death seal just to get the extra damage. You also get damage reduction for it. Of course, you lose health when you do this, but the damage reduction effectively makes up for it. So it's not a real problem. One thing about this playstyle, it's a little different from most of my builds. The majority of the builds I make, I designed them with the ability to skip large groups of enemies, go right to whatever the objective is. This one, you can't really do that because you've got to keep your leech going, or else you'll get out of Reaper form, and that's really bad. You don't want to do that. So you do have to kill enemies along the way. It makes it a little bit slower, but with some of the changes to getting keys and whatnot, it's not the worst thing. You might pick up some more dungeon keys, which you didn't really care all that much about last patch. This patch with Soulfire Bastion being a little bit rarer, it might play out okay for you anyway, but it's definitely not one of the fastest farmers, so just bear that in mind. It's also not slow, it's just you have to stop more often. You don't go quite as fast. Rogue's going to be a lot faster than it for sure, Sentinel as well. Alright, so that's it. It's pretty easy to play for sure. It does good damage. If we did a boss, it would have been really good damage as well there. It doesn't really struggle damage-wise for anything, and it is relatively tanky, so we'll just actually use that to lead us into the pros and cons. Okay, let's start with the things that I already kind of mentioned here. So damage, pro, really good, both single target and AoE. The AoE is not like super large, and it's really close to you, but that's just melee. Like if you're going to play a melee class, you expect that. But Heavy's unique definitely helps with this, because every third attack, the AoE gets larger, and it's also doing more damage. So it doesn't really struggle with AoE or with pack clearing at all. And then single target is just really solid. There's not really much to say about it. It does clear bosses pretty quickly, so it's not a huge concern at all. Other pros about it are it's pretty easy to play. You know, like it's harvest. It's make sure that you're using your movement skill and use death seal whenever you want to kill something. Basically, I think that's even remotely tanky, but you could also just use it on cooldown. Either one of those are fine. And as long as you're using volatile zombies as your auto cast, which again you don't have to if you really want to like try to super min max when you use them, but it works pretty well on it. Really, the only reason I can think of to not auto cast, because you should always have them up, is if you don't like it stopping you. Like if you don't like just like very short, like if you're walking around and then you use it in the very short stop, if it really annoys you, then maybe you don't auto cast. But if you are, then it's a really easy build to play. There's not really any challenge to rotation, so no problems there. It's also it's tanky, but in a weird way. It's got 2 health bars, so that makes it relatively tanky in comparison to others, because whatever amount of HP you have, you now have 2 bars of that HP, and so if you lose the one, you go into the other one, which gives you a chance to run away and wait for your cooldown to get back up. So that gives it some tankiness for sure. It's also got really good sustain, because you need sustain in order to stay in Reaper form. So it's got lots of leech, it's got lots of healing, lots of ways to get back your health if you start losing it. Another pro is outside of the unique, it's pretty easy to gear for. Now you do need to get that unique, Death's Embrace. You don't need Titan Heart, it's nice to have. But if you get damage leech's health while transformed with some good health, it'll be really good too. So this is definitely not a necessity. This is not a necessity. Both of these are, you're fine without them. This is the only thing you actually need. That does make it not new player friendly, but once you have it, gearing is very, you can see I'm like just wearing a bunch of rares in a lot of places. Like it's just not hard. Okay, so let's talk about some cons. There's not really a whole lot. The biggest one is that if you're in melee range, it means you're gonna get hit. If you get hit, it means you get stunned. You're more likely to get stunned just by being melee character. This has always been true about the game. It's unfortunate, but it's true. The fact that you're doing a double health bar as like a big part of your defense makes it worse, because the game does not calculate your second health bar into your stun chance, your stun avoidance chance. So you are definitely going to get stunned more often than on other builds. It's not crazy bad, at least in the early part of Empowered, but I imagine as I get higher and higher into it, the stuns are going to get a lot worse. So if you're someone who's sensitive to stuns like I am, you're just gonna have to keep track of, is this getting too bad? Do I need to not go any further in corruption because it's just starting to feel really bad to get stunned this much? The other fairly big one is you have to manage Reaper form, which is kind of a pain. It's not great quality of life. Reaper form is a constant decay on it. And so eventually, no matter what you do, the decay increases over time. There's gonna be a point to where it's too much for you to overcome, even with really great leech. So you have to manage when you fall out of Reaper form and make sure it's not during an echo. So generally that means you're going to do an echo, finish the echo, force yourself out of Reaper form, which there's no way to do it like manually. You can't like press a button and be out of Reaper form. You have to just let it drain out, which is really unfortunate. So if you have to force it, turn off or decay, let yourself just slowly drain out, then you can go back into it once you enter the echo and do it all over again. So that's pretty annoying and definitely a downside. It's not good quality of life. I don't particularly care for it, but if you can deal with that, then it's not that big of a deal. It's just, once an echo, you've got to flip out. Outside of that, though, there's not a whole lot of downsides to the build. We mentioned if you don't like the auto cast summon volatile zombies stopping you in place quite a bit, then that's not going to feel great. And also it's not the fastest farming build, so if you want to farm at a really high speed, this is probably not the best build for you. You can definitely farm on it, like it's not slow. It's just if you're trying to optimize your farm, whatever your loot per hour, you're going to want a different build to do it. Okay, that's everything, the pros and cons. Let's talk about the skill level and future patch considerations. So this is a pretty new player friendly build. The only skill level thing you got to worry about is gearing wise. If you're new, you're not going to have Death's Embrace. It's a level 75 item anyway, which may definitely tempt you to just play this until 75, which you absolutely can. It's definitely playable without Death's Embrace and still does reasonably well. But this is a pretty rare item, so if you try to get as a new player, you're going to be way past level 75 before you probably will see it. And you might have really bad luck and not see it for a very long time. So I recommend doing this as a second or later build. Do not do it as your first build, just because if you get to 75 and you're farming for this and you're just not getting it, it's going to be really frustrating knowing just how much of a power increase this is and that you're losing. So I would just wait until I got this if I were you. That's it really for skill. Like it's easy to play, not a problem there. Not hard to gear outside of this. As far as future patch considerations, I don't see this getting nerfed. Like there's no reason to. We just got into 0.8.5. Just didn't get touched. Shouldn't have got touched. It's doing well. If anything, it could stand for a little bit of a buff on the defense as far as like the stun avoid and stuff. So there's really no reason to affect this. Death's Embrace is a relatively well-balanced unique. Like it's definitely makes the build more powerful. It's definitely best in slot for the build. It's build defining, but it doesn't make the build OP. And that's great. So again, I don't see any reason why this is going to get nerfed. If it was, it would be very surprising. Okay, that's everything as far as... Oh, one thing I want to talk about that I want to start doing is just a little bit is now that we have the new dungeons, we have 3 dungeons now. So everything's been around monolith farming before as far as what we talk about, but dungeons are a different animal because they have specific boss mechanics to deal with. And so I do want to talk about from just a base level how this is likely to be on tier 4. Tier 3, anything is viable. Any build that is decently tanky is viable on tier 3 of the dungeon. It's not that hard. Tier 4 is a significant jump in difficulty, I think really on all 3 of them. So not every build is good for them. In my opinion, every build can kill them with the right player who's skilled enough, but some builds just make it way easier on the player. And so I do want to talk a little bit about how this can do on each dungeon. So as far as Julra, tier 4 Julra, this is not a good build for her, and it's not a good build because it is melee and she hates melee. She's really mean to melee because she loves to sit in things that melee can't reach her with and have a lot of stuff out that you take damage from, a lot of ways to take damage. And if you're a melee who leeches, that means you're sitting there not leeching while she sits in something else that you can't reach her for. So I don't think she's a good melee fight. And for that reason, I can't recommend this build for it. I think you'll really struggle with it. You can definitely do it if you're skilled, but if you're looking for like a tier 4 Julra farmer, this is not it. As far as Lightless Arbor, I think Lightless Arbor is a really well-balanced dungeon that pretty much every build can do. I don't think there are any builds that particularly struggle with it. It is not an anti-melee one. It's very much not anti-melee. In fact, it forces range into melee range, which I think is a great way to do it because you're not punishing the already punished. Instead, you are punishing the advantaged. So once you learn the mechanics of the Lightless Arbor fight against the mountain, you should be fine with this build. It's reasonably mobile and it can take advantage of spots where it can avoid the boulders in the first phase. And the second phase, there's nothing that should be disadvantaged on it. As far as Soulfire Bastion, I have the least amount of experience with that right now because it has been so hard to get keys. That hopefully will change as of before this build goes out, because the patch should be out fixing one of the ways to get keys. But anyway, I don't have much experience with it. I think it's probably fine with it. My experience with it previously had been with Warpath, where you have to switch your damage immunity, which takes you out of Warpath, which stops you from channeling, which causes you to take massive amounts of damage. It's a really anti-channeling fight. This one has nothing to do with that. There's nothing in that fight that I can think of that would make this a bad fight for it. So I really think only tier 4 Julra is what you got to worry about. I think the other two, you should be fine with this once you learn the mechanics of the fight. I don't think it's like severely disadvantaged over other builds. Okay, with that being said, let's move on to the skills and specs. Okay, let's start with harvest. So the most important, well, there's 2 really important things in the harvest tree. First one is go down and get Elements of Death, which converts all damage, added damage, to necrotic. This is important for one very big reason. Even bigger if you don't have the unique yet, but if you do, there's 113 melee physical damage on the unique. I don't know why. They insist on making melee physical damage on a clearly melee necrotic build, a clearly necrotic unique, but they continue to do this with melee while they don't do it for spell, where they give you adaptive spell. So we got to roll with it. And there's a good way to fix that, fortunately, with harvest, which is Elements of Death, which will convert all that physical to necrotic, so that all of your increases to necrotic damage, your necrotic pen, shred, so on and so forth, will scale with all of your sources of added damage. So you definitely want this. Then we're going to go up and we're going to take Iron Mouth, so which is going to give us 30% base crit chance. And that's not increased crit chance, it's base crit chance. So that gives you 35% base crit chance, which means if you only had 100% increased crit, you'd already be at 70% crit. So you can see that this will help you scale crit very, very quickly. It will cost you health now to use Harvest. That's okay. With the sources of Leech and healing we're going to get from this build, it's not going to be a problem. So definitely take 3 of 5 in that. You're going to have to take Legion of the Lich to get to it, which is completely useless. Unfortunately, there's no good route here that even makes sense. Like, if you can go this way and get, like, bleed, more bleed, and, like, mana converted to ward, which you don't really want at all. You could do that. It costs more points and get this really trash spot right here. We don't want to do that, so unfortunately we're forced to take Legion of the Lich. And we're also going to take 2 in Finality, which gives you a kill threshold, which is fine. Like, 8% kill threshold, great. It doesn't really move the needle that much, but hey, kill a boss a little bit faster. We're also going to take 2 in Skull Shards. It's going to give us 120% hit damage every 6. So do the math. 120 divided by 6 is how much ultimately more damage you're getting from that. And then we're going to go up and we're going to take 3 in Great Scythe for the area. Also to open up 2 in Spectre, which gives another 6 base crit. So do the math here. You're at 41% base crit now. 100% now you're at 82. So you really need very little increased crit to get this build to work because of these. And then we're going to take 3 of 7 in Symbol of Loss. We get 39% marked enemy damage. We're going to mark enemies through 2 different sources, so they should be marked most of the time. There might be some play in here to switch this and this or back and forth. Also note, I've only got 22 in here, so if I got 24, I'd be putting them in these 2 nodes here, Skull Shards and Symbol of Loss. But I only have that +2 right now, so there's some room for improvement already. Okay, let's go from here to the most important thing that you absolutely have to have. We'll go down the line. We're actually we're gonna bounce a little bit, but we'll go to Reperform. Reperform is doing multiple things for you. The first thing it's doing for you is it is giving you an extra health bar, which is awesome. Harder to die is always good. It is also giving you a movement ability instead of transplant, so that you don't have to waste points in transplant. And it's giving you more attack speed and damage, and it's allowing you to mark the target a bit more. So let's go through what we've got here. So the first thing we've done is actually get some health drain lowered, 30% here. You could take 4 here. 3 seems to be fine. 3 of 3 in Reap cooldown recovery from Swift Harbinger, which will just make you be able to reap a lot more. Then we're going up here, 1 of 4 in Soul for a Soul. We get increased damage. We do take some decreased healing effectiveness, which is not great because we do heal from multiple sources. But I think it's worth it overall. You could switch to Ghastly Flow if you don't like that, but we have so much regen between healing and through Leech that I don't think it's a big issue. We did take 4 of 4 in Reaper's Curse for the increased damage and increased crit chance. At this point, you can see we don't need much crit at all from anywhere else. 2 of 4 in Death Comes Quickly for swiftness chance on kill. 3 of 3 in Rapid Destruction for 30% attack speed. It's very difficult to get attack speed in this build. Without a legendary version of the unique weapon, you have no attack speed on that, so this is a really big node for that. Then we'll take 1 of 4 in Death Touch Scythe for a little bit of necrotic damage base, which will allow us to open up Haunting, where while in Reperform we have a chance to apply Mark for Death to enemies on hit. This is basically just an extra because we're going to apply most of our Mark for Death from our zombies, which we'll get into in a few minutes. Okay, let's move on to Aura of Decay, which really does one major thing and one minor thing. The major thing it does is it allows you to heal a percent of missing health, 8% each second. So this is really big for maintaining your Reperform. It just gives you a little extra sustain. And it's passive. It just runs in the background. It's great. Because we're also going to take Decrepify. We won't be taking any poison, so that won't be sort of circumventing this. So that's going to be a really nice too. We're also going to take Chill the Bone for the chill chance from here. It's just a nice, easy way to get chill. Okay, up to Undertow, Corrosive Aura for the enemy armor drop, which is really just to open up Decrepify, which now turns our poison chance into armor shred chance. So we will be shredding the armor of the enemy, which is going to be pretty useful for us. Unfortunately, we're not physical, so it's not like the most value, but it is definitely valuable to armor shred. We're going to take 3 of 3 in Rotweaver for ailment frequency to do more armor shred. We're also going to take 4 of 4 in Plague Rat, which gives us more areas so that we're actually applying this to more enemies. And then I just finished off with 1 in inoculation, just take a little bit less poison damage because gotta put it somewhere. Okay, let's talk about Death Seal, which is a big damage source. So what makes this a big damage source is that if you read in the description, deal more damage equal to your percent missing health and take less damage equal to half your percent missing health. This is only useful if you seal with lower health, because if you seal 100%, you're getting almost no benefit out of it. But that's easy enough to do. We can do that right here with Life Tap. Excuse me, not Life Tap, with Deadlock, which reduces you to 33% of your maximum health on activation, which means you'll be getting 77% more damage, and 77 divided by half, the 33 and a half, something like that, percent damage reduction, which will definitely allow you to live through your Death Seals. And if you have a problem, you'll just take Life Tap, which will automatically release if you drop below 10%, which should allow you to regen very quickly. On top of that, we're mostly just adding stuff because you got to put it somewhere. Duration is really good. We do actually want Moratorium. That's pretty important. We're increasing our global poison chance because why not? Like, I guess we might as well do that. Increased damage for missing health's nice because we're going to missing health. So it's just another increase of damage when we hit this up, and we're at 33%. And then we're just doing some death waves because there's just nothing in here that really matters. There's nothing super valuable in here. Even this, like, necrosis seems like it'd be good. Like, oh yeah, necrotic shred, we like that per 100 ward, but Death Seal removes all your ward. So there's no reason to generate ward to get this because you're just gonna lose it. In fact, yeah, you're just gonna lose it. It's just not that useful. So we're not gonna take it. Okay, the last one is probably the weirdest one, the one that seems most counterintuitive, which is Summon Volatile Zombie, because it's minions. And why are we using minions in this build? Well, the reason is because Volatile Zombie has a lot of benefits, a lot of ways to buff your character and nerf the enemy or debuff the enemy, and we're going to take advantage of those. There's 3 in particular that we're taking advantage of. One is going to be a heal, another is going to be more armor shred, and then they're actually going to apply the majority of the Mark for Death, which is a big damage boost for our build. We already talked about how we get it from Symbol of Loss, but the build itself, actually, Harvest itself, doubles the damage you do to anything that's cursed. Mark for Death's a curse, so marking them is really, really valuable. Okay, so we're going to take 1 in Path of Destruction to get to Necromantic Fervor, which gives you 2% of the zombie's maximum health when they explode. It heals you. Really good. Then we're going to go up, we're going to take, eventually we'll take 5 of 5 in here. You want that summoning speed. The mana efficiency is nice too. The summoning speed is really important because, as I showed earlier, you're going to like get a stutter, so to speak, like not a real stutter, like not an in-game stutter, but like you have to stop to summon every time you do it. So making that as short as possible is great. 1 of 4 in Daunting Blast. 1 in Ravenous, which does give them more hit damage to bosses. This is all just to get to the final node, though. We don't really care that much about this. A kill threshold for them is good, I guess. We have a kill threshold already in Harvest. Just stuff we have to take. Bring them into Necrotic is, yeah, synergistic, but doesn't really matter because they're minions. But Corpse Bane is good. Corpse Bane causes them to mark for death on explosion. So they're going to do this consistently because they're going to explode consistently. So you will be able to maintain marks on, especially in bosses, any enemies that don't die quickly consistently, and if they die quickly you don't care, so it's fine. We did take 1 over here for additional zombies and to add a cooldown. You do need this. You need Dreadful Horde if you want to autocast. If you want to autocast, you have to have this. I recommend it either way because otherwise you'll be casting a lot more often. You don't want to. This gives you that cooldown so that you can do that. The last thing we're going to need to take is we're going to go down here, take 1 in Army of Rot and 1 in Repulsive Vomit to just open up Corrosive Guts so that they armor shred 200% per second. So it's more armor shred, so you get lots of armor shred in the build. So that is everything the zombies do, and that is all of the skills and specs. So let's move on to the passives. All right, starting with the base class Acolyte. So we've got a couple of good nodes in the first section here. Bone Auras gives 160 armor. Armor is kind of hard to find on Lich in general, and we are actually shredding armor with our Poison Aura, our Aura of Decay. So we definitely want to get it when we can, just to try to not go into negative. So this is a good node to take just for that reason. Forbidden Knowledge gives us intelligence and necrotic resistance. The necro resistance here is just really good. 40% is really great. We're also going to take Dark Rituals. Dark Rituals is a really good node that was bugged last patch, so it didn't work at all. It didn't give the player the attack speed, and 20% for 5 points is pretty freaking good. So now it works, and this actually just makes the build even better than it was last patch, so this is great. The reason why this works for us is because we are using Summon Volatile Zombie, and we're using on cooldown, and this is up for 10 seconds, and the cooldown I think is 5 seconds on Volatile Zombie, so it's 100% uptime, so it's a great node. We're also going to take 1 in Mania of Mortality, which is just to get over to Unnatural Preservation, for more resistances, necrotic, and poison. If you find yourself having too much resistance, this is an easy node to take out, but if you don't, then this is a nice little way of getting double resistances. All right, the rest of it will all go into Lich. We're not going to worry about Necromancer at all. So we've got 8 of 8 in Dance with Death, 40% increased damage, which is tripled at low life, and will be at low life every time we use our Death Seal, so this is great. 10 of 10 we have in Apocrypha. This can be something that you put into more later. Intelligence is good. Mana regen is actually pretty good because we do blow through mana sometimes in long fights. But it's not like a big thing, so it's a good filler when you have the space for it or you need to get further along in the tree. Nothing else is really good. Grasp of Fate, 60% necrotic damage is great. Then we've got 4 of 8 in Bed of Souls. It's actually more of a filler as well. I put this in towards the end just for some extra vitality, but otherwise it's not a great node in comparison to a lot of the other stuff, so definitely save this for later. We have 8 of 8 in Crippling Insight for the intelligence that it gives us, plus 16. Reduced health regen doesn't really matter. We don't care about health regen at all, so no big deal. Unclosing Wounds, 112% increased damage, but we do lose 8% health drain per second, so only take this if you can handle the health drain. If you can't, then you can always just get out of it. But if your leech is high enough along with your heals, you should be able to manage this, certainly late game. So this shouldn't be a problem too far in. Deathbringer gives us crit chance and attack speed, an awesome node. Of course, we don't need much crit chance. This is definitely a node you're going to want to get it from, though, because of the attack speed as well. We also do have it in Dark Guard. The ward gain and crit doesn't really matter much here because we are losing all our ward every time we Death Seal. But the 50% crit is nice. If you find yourself over crit, this is a really easy node to take out and put elsewhere. But if you're not over crit, this is a really easy way to get the crit. So this is situational as you need it. If you find yourself with too much crit, take it out of here. Then we got 5 of 5 in Clairvoyant Insight for the crit multi, which is great. We definitely want this no matter what. We got 10 of 10 in Necrotic Energy, just for plus 20 melee necrotic damage. You know, added damage is always great. So take all of those. And then Ageless Ascetic for the increased attack speed and the damage leeches health and hit. And the move speed. Those are all really good things to have, so nothing bad here. And Soul Maw gives us more leech. Of course, we're going to want lots of leech. And the increased leech on it is great because we had a lot of sources of leech. So that will multiply all those by 25%. All right, that is the passive tree. Moving on to the gearing section. So you're going to notice this one is relatively standard fare for most of my builds with an extra focus on health. We usually do a lot in health because, you know, health is just really strong in the game. When you have 2 health bars, it's even stronger. So definitely, you know, try to get a lot of it, especially since we want to make sure that we have enough space to leech up and, you know, take a few hits before we potentially run out of our Lich form. So let's start with the weapon. We've already talked about this quite a bit. Death's Embrace. You're definitely going to want this, like no doubt about it. If you can manage to get a legendary version, melee attack speed is really good for this. Melee necrotic would also be perfectly fine for it. Crit multi would be great too. Any of those are really good. I think personally melee attack speed probably is going to be the best scaler. But I didn't really run the numbers exactly, so you know, feel free to do so. This is a really good unique because of what it does. You know, it gives you the melee crit multi, then melee necrotic damage, and the less bonus damage taken from critical strikes, which allows us to not worry about crit too much. We just like, okay, don't worry about crit, no crit avoidance, so it frees up some space. But the real, you know, star of this is the harvesting. Well, at 2 stacks, you do 200% more melee damage, 100% increased area effect. That's why we really, really want the Death's Embrace. So do make sure you get this if you're going to run this build. It just makes it a lot stronger. I do have a Titan's Heart on here. It's not required. And in fact, if you don't have a legendary version where you can put either damage leeches, health while transformed, or increased health, I'm not even sure it's best in slot if it's just regular Titan Heart. So feel free also to wear just a crafted with, you know, increased health, added health, damage leeches, health while transformed, vitality, dexterity, so on and so forth. Those are all really good stats too. Damage while transformed is also really good. You can do that as well. We do have that up here as well. Increased necrotic damage while transformed is really good on the helmet. Vitality, health. Notice there's a trend here. Lots of health. In fact, if you look, like ideally we have over 5k health. I don't have that or anything close to that on the build I'm running, but you know, if you get everything to align, that's great. So lots of health. Gold amulet we went with here just to get the fire and lightning resistance up. A little bit easier to use a gold amulet on Lich or Acolyte, since you can get necrotic fairly easily, so the bone amulet's not as valuable. Crit multi and necrotic damage as the prefixes. We're using frailty here. Could also use frailty down here on the relic if you wanted to. And we're also putting more health on here. Belt, health, very like standard for me. Almost always increased health, hybrid health. And we did seal a cleanse on this, which would be amazing if you can do that. Then increased necrotic damage and increased mana regen. By the way, we're sealing the cleanse because you can do a tier 1 and get basically all the benefit. You get the same cleanse no matter what. It's always 100% chance. The ward gain on potion use is pretty useless for us and for most builds. So if we seal that, then we don't have to worry about it, and it's all great. The rings, I am running one legend or one unique in here. It's actually legendary. You don't need it. Quicksilver is nice though because it gives you melee attack speed. It gives you movement speed. It gives you a chance to haste for 1 second hit on hit, so it gives you a little bit more speed to run around. If you get a legendary with necrotic damage or health, it's amazing. You don't have to run this at all, though. It's really not a big deal. If you get a legendary though with some good stats on it, then you might want to. The other one's a silver ring. Silver rings are great in all builds. Doesn't have to be a silver ring, just makes you move a little faster. Int, dexterity are both really good because they scale. They both scale your harvest, dex. I think int, let's see. I think int scales the base, and I think dex scales the increase. Let's make sure. Let's see, yeah. Int gives you +1 melee necrotic damage. And dex gives you 4% increased damage. Int also gives you more health for your summon volatile zombie, which in turn heals you more because their healing is based upon their health. Okay. Also, health and elemental resistance on this. Get your resistances where you can. Fill on health, and the rest is basically the name of the game here. As far as your boots, of course, you're going to want move speed, vitality, health, hybrid health. We've got Crusader gloves here for the void res because it's a lot. Really helps you take care of half of it right there. Then we have int, hybrid health, and we got shred armor here. Shred armor is not very needed here, by the way. Like, you can fill that in with just about anything, put a resistance there because you've got a lot of shred armor for other sources, but it's just more shred if you have nothing else to put there. So definitely don't be afraid to put a resistance there instead. And as far as the relic, we are using the Decaying Homunculus for the increased necrotic damage, but not a huge deal if you don't have that. The +2 to harvest is much more important. Make sure you get that no matter what. It's just going to give you more damage. Then the dexterity, of course, or int can go there as well. Health and physical resistance here. Again, these resistances are interchangeable. Put them wherever you can to get to your cap, and then fill in health where you have space. Okay, blessings. We got crit multi, very good on a build that does 100% crit chance. So definitely want that. I've got a stun chance here because there's not really much else to put. You could put lightning resistance here if you want to cap it that way, but we had it capped in other sources, not needed. So stun chance is not bad because you do hit really hard, which means you do have a good chance of stunning enemies. So effectively doubling the chance you will stun, assuming you have no other stun chance increases. It's not a bad thing to have. We went all res with the Reign of Dragons because we don't need crit avoidance, because we have most of the crit damage that we would take is now reduced down to very low. So we can take the little extra bit of crit here instead of, putting a whole blessing and another tier 5 towards that. It's not that big a deal. So we did that. With increased armor with Bulwark of the Tundra, again, armor is hard to come by and you're shredding it, so that's really bad. So if we can at least mitigate some of it, that's good. And chance to shred and necrotic resistance on hit is really strong, so definitely recommend it for the Spirits of Fire blessing. Okay, the last thing is the idols, and these are really easy. I just did health everywhere. I did health. Increased health on the large idols, increased health on the stout, the 1x2s, because there's really not a whole lot of other good affixes that they offer that are that important, and you do a lot of damage already, so you might as well be super tanky. But there are some damage things in there, some necrotic based stuff. If you get that stuff, great. But if you're already up to like 400, 500,000 damage crits, you really don't need that much. So you might as well get really, really tanky so you can push the corruption. Okay, that's all of the gearing. Let's go on to the rotation, and then we're done. All right, so we've got this nice new area with all these new training dummies. We might as well take advantage of it. So let's do the rotation in like an AoE form over here and like make all the numbers really big. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do, assuming you're not annoyed by it, is auto cast summon volatile zombies. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. They are now on auto cast. From there, we also want to turn on our Aura of Decay and leave it on. There's no reason to turn it off, except when you're trying to get back out of Reaper form. Only in that case would you want to do it. But when you're in an Echo, you definitely don't want to do that, so you want to keep it on. All right, so then we want to make sure Reaper form's on. Good. And when we are fighting stuff like this, we're just going to go ahead and Death Seal. Boom, just like that. There we go. Then it's a matter of holding down right click, and when you want to move faster, you just go ahead and reap. That's the entire rotation. Death Seal on cooldown when you're fighting stuff so that you do more damage. Reap to get through stuff, and hold down right click. Again, make sure as you're going through echoes that you do in fact tag enemies as you're going through. You can even kill them for sure, might as well. Otherwise you will run out of Reaper form because you won't be leeching, and that's bad. You don't want to do that. That's it though. That's all you have to think about. Hit some enemies along the way so you are actually leeching. Use your Death Seal to do more damage, and use Reap to go faster. That's it. Pretty easy rotation. All right, thank you so much for watching this build guide. I hope you have a great time with it. It's definitely a fun build. Also hope you're having a great time in Last Epoch. If you have any questions or just like to hang out, check out what I'm doing on stream. I do stream 5 to 6 days a week. Would love to have you there. And we also have a Discord where we would love to have you. Feel free to ask any questions. We also just talk about the game and other games quite a lot. It's a growing community. Would love to have more people. All right, thanks again for watching. Hope you have a great time in Last Epoch, and I will see you all again real soon.